Hello everyone. Hello, this is Dr. Bertalan Meskó, the medical futurist. Hopefully everything is working. You can hear me, you can see me well. If you could confirm as usual, that would mean a lot to me. This is a live Q&A, and the reason why we are here is to answer any questions that you might have about the future of medicine, the future of healthcare, digital health, medical, healthcare technologies. For those who don't know me or the medical futurist, my background is I'm a medical doctor with a PhD in genomics, but about a decade ago, I switched to futuristic studies, which means I'm a professional futurist, and my job is to basically answer questions. We help governments, healthcare organizations, healthcare companies, patient organizations, medical associations, better understand what is going on in healthcare in the 21st century. And I don't do that alone. Of course, I have an amazing team, a dedicated crew. We are 14 people now at the Medical Futurist. You can find me and us on medicalfuturist.com, and we are quite active on all the social media channels, except for TikTok now, but it's not even impossible anymore. So we are quite active every single day on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and we publish analysis about digital health and artificial intelligence news. Of course, not just we share the news, we try to provide the context around those news. Why that announcement, that progress, that development was important. What's the big picture context around those announcements? In the meantime, we publish a lot of content besides those analysis for free, YouTube videos, articles on medicalfuturist.com, infographics, reports, and so many other things. It would take a lot of time to list everything. So the plan today is not to list those things we work at the Medical Futurist, but for you to send me questions. Any questions you might have again about the future of medicine, healthcare, pharma, about technologies, digital health, artificial intelligence. But we have a theme today, and that theme is the future of the pharmaceutical industry. As a physician futurist, I'm always a short-term futurist, meaning I'm the most interested in the next 5 to 10 years. We can talk about science fiction-like stuff and far-fetched technologies coming after that, maybe in a few decades or so, from quantum computing to artificial general intelligence, but the major theme today is the near-term future of pharma companies. The reason why we chose this theme for today's Q&A live is that, as many of you know who have been following us, that we spent the whole summer analyzing the role of big technology companies. Amazon, IBM, Apple, NVIDIA, Google, Alphabet, and Microsoft, the 6 big tech giants, and how they want to march into healthcare. And the end product of that long summer analysis was this infographic here, the big tech marching into healthcare infographic. Of course, like all the articles we write, all the infographics we release, you can access all these for free on medicalfuturist.com. So basically, on this infographic, we came up with a summary about how these big tech giants want to dive into healthcare, which trends or technologies they are the most interested in. For example, Microsoft is very good at health IT, but they're not so good at wearable sensors. Apple is amazing at wearable consumer products, but they're not very much into health IT and medical records. So that's how we try to make a distinction between the efforts these companies have been putting into marching into healthcare. And the plan we have for today is to show you the same things. Not through this, but through that. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, we have been publishing these articles in which we have analyzed how the 14 major pharma companies have been trying to tackle digital health. In each article, you can find which companies we focused on. And of course, we wrote a summary about each of these companies. These are quite content-rich summaries, so don't be surprised that you will find many links in these summaries. But we wanted to give a clear picture about where these companies are heading, from Merck and Sanofi to AbbVie and even more. Boehringer Ingelheim, Takeda, AstraZeneca, Amgen, Roche, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Bayer, Novartis, and all the efforts they have been putting into digital health. What kind of areas they have been investing into, what kind of collaborations they have started with hospitals and startups, what kind of new reimbursement models they have been creating, and basically what kind of digital health and AI technologies these companies have been excited about or interested in. It has been quite a long way to go, quite a detailed analysis, but there's a reason we have been doing this. Nobody can talk about the future of medicine and pharma without talking about pharma companies. And those who registered through eventbrite.com, actually, those sent us plenty of questions, like 50 quite detailed questions. And I plan to go through many of those, but I want to start the stream with your questions. And just for a moment, if you could just say hi and tell us from which city and country you are coming from, that would mean a lot to me and to us. It's always so great to see that you are worldwide and it's a global audience. That's why we have these Q&As at 4 p.m. in our time, in Central European time, which is the morning in the US and night in Asia and India. Hopefully that's the best time for most of you. So it's good to see many names in the chat. I've been seeing in the previous Q&A sessions too. Oh, it's Boston, San Francisco, Brazil, Scotland. Okay, I'm very glad to say that we are again quite an international audience. I have plenty of questions to tackle today, and well, I always try to do my best. I just had my cup of coffee. I have water here. We have our editor-in-chief, Judith Cusco, in the chat. So if you see someone sending you a message from the Medical Futurist, it's her. It's not me. I can't do these things at the same time, but she will help you out. If you have a question about a topic we published analysis about, then of course she will link to that article for you. Servus Laci, a Hungarian from Frankfurt, then Torino, Italy, London, Spain, UK, Madrid, Switzerland, Brighton, UK, Princeton. It's so amazing to see you guys here. Thank you for being with us every single month. You know what? Even early December, we will have a Q&A session summarizing this weird, turbulent year that we've had. Hello from Poland, from Colombia. Wow, amazing guys. White Bear Lake, Barcelona, United States. Ola from Barcelona. Now we have Xavi back in the house at FC Barcelona. Great news for all the Culés around the world. Netherlands, again Colombia. Great to see you guys. So we have only 52 minutes to go, so let's jump right into it. I will start with a few questions you just sent in the chat, and if you can't send me enough questions to answer, I will jump back and forth between the Eventbrite questions that were sent to us before and those that you can ask now. Pakistan, India, great to see you guys. I hope that you saw that we just published quite a weird video, something we haven't done before, and I hope you, let me show it to you. I hope you don't mind us submitting or publishing such a video, answering weird comments from the comment section. I've never done a video like this, reacting to videos. It's not my, best part or best feature to react to videos. I've never done this before, but you sometimes send us such wonderful, sometimes so weird comments that I had to reflect on some of them. That's why we published this video on the Medical Futurist YouTube channel. So I go back to the first ones. Wing Zero, will Rejuvenation Biotech happen within a few decades? Let me share the question with you too. I do think that we will have, longevity research is progressing. I do think that we will have medications and treatments that could help us deal with aging better. But my standing about longevity research is still the same. You have a better chance for a longer and healthier life by becoming an empowered patient yourself and accessing your data, your medical records, and creating a partnership with your physician, than waiting for a miracle drug to treat aging. That's how simple it is. Thank you, Matthew Olson, for confirming that you can hear me and see me well enough. Wow, Gabriele Travaglia. I hope I could pronounce your name in the right way. How can someone who followed the classical path in medicine and is presently working inside the hospital with its pen and paper contribute to the change? What a wonderful question to ask. I think by acknowledging that your role as a medical professional is not the traditional role anymore, being the key holder to the ivory tower of medicine. First of all, there is no ivory tower anymore. Patients can access the same studies, data technologies than you. Second, roles have been changing, and your role would be like being a guide for your patients in the jungle of health and digital information. And if you acknowledge that new role, then I think you can be a real asset in your patients' health and disease management, like the kind of expertise I get from my primary care physician, who is such a guide for me in my journey as an empowered patient. So thank you so much for asking that question. Ivor Juster, it's nice to see you again in the chat section. Thank you for I can see it's a smart question before even finishing that. So how should approval regulation evolve of pharmaceutical therapies that may include genomics, data capture, two-way communication with AI-based modification of the therapy, etc.? It's a wonderful question to ask and quite a hard one, quite a challenging one to tackle. Let me try to summarize this through the story of the AI-based medical technologies that have been approved by the FDA. We have right now actually quite a highly cited study. I want to share it with you right away, that we published last year in NPJ Digital Medicine. Here it is, in which we analyzed all the FDA-approved AI-based medical technologies. Here is all of them. You think I can share? No, not yet. No, not this way. Okay, I'm not giving up that easy. No. Give me a second here. I want to show you the infographic we made, because that gives quite a good picture about all the AI-based medical technologies. And it was such a huge work we did with that, and I'm so proud of it. Okay, now here it is. Not yet. Bear with me, guys, bear with me. Okay, so these are all the FDA-approved AI-based medical technologies. And you can see 3 medical specialties stand out: oncology, radiology, and cardiology. The reason why I'm telling you this is that the FDA has been approving logged algorithms in a way that the developers come up with an algorithm trained on big data sets and using machine learning, but then the algorithm that gets regulated and gets into the market is a logged one. It won't change. And now there are adaptive algorithms that can change with every decision they make. The more data you feed them with, the better decisions those algorithms can make. So what the FDA or any regulatory body regulates and gives a green light to the technology to come to the market, that technology, that product will be different from the second it is being implemented into healthcare. That's the future of regulations changing. And if the FDA and such regulatory bodies can deal with analyzing and regulating adaptive algorithms, then I have no doubts that they can take care of wearable sensors, genomic data, and anything else. That's the biggest challenge for regulators out there regarding the pharma industry. Balázs Csaba Varsányi has a not so much pharma-related question, but it's still a good question. Can we really estimate a blood pressure or blood sugar measurement from the Apple Watch? The next release in the Apple Watch, as there are some rumors about that. It's a good point, a good insight. I think it's quite easy to measure blood pressure or to extrapolate. So once you use a smartwatch-based device that uses spectroscopy to analyze your blood flow actually, and you also use a traditional blood pressure cuff at the same time as for a reference measurement, then after that measurement, the smartwatch can extrapolate from those data points into your actual blood pressure without using the blood pressure cuff ever again. That's possible. Regarding blood sugar levels, that's a different scenario. I'm sure that technologically it's possible. We've seen, not companies, we've seen research groups doing that, even using a contact lens from sweat and from tears. So it's basically technologically doable, but let's see the laboratory-based studies comparing the results to the traditional methods. If the Apple Watch and the company behind it can prove that their technology can bring in the same quality of results, then of course, technologically and theoretically answering your question, both are possible. All right. Lynette Pearson has a question, quite a long one. I can't even see before sharing it with you. So hopefully there are no bad words in the question, of course not. Do you believe Big Pharma has a shared vision of the impact digital technologies will have in their industry? Why do you think each company's vision might be different to others? I do think that they don't have a shared vision about how these technologies will impact their business and industry in the long term. I'm pretty sure they don't even have a clear idea about how their own company would be impacted by these changes and transformations. I mean, all of them are working on that, and digital transformation is the sexiest expression these days in the pharma industry. It doesn't mean that we know what it means in action, but they use it all the time. But about the second part of your question, let me again direct you to no, not that one. No. Okay. You think I get in trouble by using a system that doesn't like me so much? No, I'm not. So again, let me direct your attention to these articles we have just published on the medicalfuturist.com website, where we analyze all the 14 major companies. So one by one, we summarize all the things you need to know about the specific efforts those companies have been making. And I could spend time doing the same here, but it doesn't make any sense. We wrote down everything in those articles. What I'm doing pharmacy second year. What should I continue or leave and take admission in biomed? Well, I don't. I mean, we had a dedicated session to career advice in live Q&A, but I'm not in a position to give you career advice simply because I'm myself on quite an unorthodox journey. Therefore, you have to be the one making the decision for yourself. But I definitely don't think you should leave pharmacy school just because there are some technological trends out there. You can still, I mean, I finished medical school and I don't do that job the way I was trained to do. I do a different job, but I want to feel like I can contribute to society through the research that I'm doing in my new job. So of course. All right, and it's enough to ask the question once. You don't have to ask it 4 times. I try to catch up with you and answer all the questions that you might have. All right, is my doctor going to laugh at me if I really send my ECG report captured on my Apple Watch? I think he or she would be quite a bad doctor to do that if they did that. I mean, the transformation in the approach medical professionals have about empowered patients can only change if more and more patients come with such data to share, reports from genetic tests, and questions about technologies, apps, and data. So I couldn't do anything else than encourage you to try it. If there is something wrong about your ECG based on your smartwatch's report, absolutely do that. Bring that information to your primary care physician. Bring that information to the next doctor-patient visit, because they need to know that you are an empowered patient. You would love to use these data, but of course you don't know how to do that without their expertise. Maybe you also want to describe that for them. I think these technologies on the long term can improve the doctor-patient relationship. These technologies and the technologies I have been using have definitely improved my relationship with my primary care physician. But I had 2 primary care physicians before the one I have today, and those physicians didn't like so much the kind of data I wanted to include in my health journey. So I kept on looking, and I'm sure they will change by time. I just didn't want to be the first one to do that. We need to be there has to be enough patients who bring such questions to their doctors. Ivor, it's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Ban Latsi. Yes, here's a question about the future of pharma. How do you see the future proofness of pharma companies from Europe compared to the US? Which pharma company is the most advanced? There are 3 issues in 2 questions. Good stuff. One is about future proof. I'm not sure if any companies can be future-proof. For that, it will require them to be at the forefront of digital health innovation, and none of them is there. I don't see any difference between European and US-based companies, pharma companies. I see good efforts from each of them, but it doesn't depend on whether we are talking about a European department within the company or a US one. Regulations are different. I think the US regulator is a year ahead of the European one. That might be an advantage for US pharma companies, or it could be an advantage for European companies for seeing how the European Medicines Agency will implement regulations based on what the FDA has been doing. It's hard to decide. Which pharma company is the most advanced? I think none. I have literally worked with the world's top 20 pharma companies, giving keynotes, doing consultancy for them, top 20. I've seen good examples in each, but none of them stands out. Maybe the best example I could tell you is about how the company Roche acquired the diabetes startup MySugar, but that's just a department under Roche, not the whole company. So the company still doesn't stand out in the age of digital health, but that's a good example I like to tell from time to time. All right. Bergson Fogacha de Oliveira asked the question, what key technologies you understand that potential to have high impact in animal health in the next 5 years? I'm quite lucky to share that. I just gave a keynote about 2 weeks ago to 10,000 vets in the world. It was quite a huge event. And in that event, I talked about digital health for pets and their vets. And it's on medicalfuturist.com. And I really wrote down everything I think about this field. So, instead of just me going through a few examples in 30 seconds, I would encourage you to go through that article because that summarizes all my thoughts around the health of pets and the work of vets in the digital health era. All right, going on. Dr. Kollár, János, it's great to see you again. Thank you for being on the stream. I'm just at that point in the chat section. Is it really beneficial to do masters in health informatics or drug regulatory affairs? It's a career advice, career option. I cannot give you one. I don't know what you're working in, what kind of plans you have in mind, what fields interest you the most. So just please don't expect me to give you such advice because I literally cannot do that. Okay, KATT, which sounds like a name of an exciting robot, just had this question. How has your previous genomic experience influenced your work, thoughts about drug development currently? Do you feel pharma companies are making the best use of genomics? Doing PhD in genomics has impacted me as a futurist in a big way that maybe out of the fields I'm constantly looking at, like 30 technological trends, I'm the most pessimistic about genomics because we haven't seen enough examples come to fruition since the completion of the Human Genome Project. That's just not enough. We have about dozens of examples about using genomic variants in clinical decision making. And we completed the Human Genome Project more than 2 decades ago. I mean, it's quite an understatement to say that genomics has failed to implement the clinical job hard enough. It doesn't mean that the field doesn't have the potentials. Maybe it's just that evidence-based medicine takes so long for genomics to reach the market that it has been failing at many tasks. But to say that pharma companies are not making the best use of genomics, I don't think it would be fair. I would say that healthcare systems cannot use genomics enough. I mean, I'm pretty sure that pharma companies use genomics and AI extensively in the drug design part of their research, not in clinical trials and the clinical decision-making part of the process, but in drug design. It's never enough, but it's much more than what traditional healthcare companies have been making out of genomics yet. If you're doing pharmacy, should we learn AI? It's a good question. I think whatever you do in medicine, healthcare, or even the pharma industry, indeed, you need to have a basic understanding of artificial intelligence. You know that you don't have to go far away. You don't have to go far enough to get that kind of knowledge, because as usual, the Medical Futurist Institute is here to help you. We published a paper last year at the highest level digital health journal, a short guide for medical professionals in the era of artificial intelligence. Even if you are not a medical professional, I think that paper, that open access paper, would give you an absolutely crystal clear image about what you need to know about AI, the definition, the levels, the dangers, the machine learning methods, and the opportunities, everything in one open access paper. So please feel free to check it out. Okay, P. Kennard, that's a strange name. Great session, thank you. How do you think that the pharma departments of hospitals will need to evolve? How do you foresee the relationship between pharma companies and hospital procurement department? That's quite a smart question to ask, and you will put me on the spot here. I have been analyzing the 3 visions for pharmacies, but not hospital pharmacies in the future, and pharma companies, but never hospital pharmacies specifically. So if I had to take a bet on it right now, I would say that it would be something similar to the second vision we published about the future of pharmacies, which would be around the idea that pharmacists are the most underused healthcare professionals, and they have the expertise and the knowledge to help patients, and patients cannot spend enough time with their healthcare professionals. So that's a kind of gap that hospital pharmacies could fill in, that the time patients cannot spend with their healthcare professionals could be spent with their hospital pharmacists, and pharmacists could help patients, guide them through the jungle of data and information they come across. Wow, I'm trying to catch up with you guys. Please keep the questions coming. I couldn't even switch back to the Eventbrite website questions, so I'm just now focusing on your live questions. Erin Dixon had a question. In what areas do you see pharma leaning on tech vendors the most? For example, patient engagement apps or others. Well, in the digital health era, I see a huge role in companies developing technologies. Pharma companies are not good at that, let's be honest. And I don't even see how they would become better at this in a decade or so. So pharma companies will keep on reaching out to tech giants and technology companies when it comes to using apps, wearable sensors, 3D printing technologies, artificial intelligence for any products or processes they have in mind. They just don't have the right expertise, experience, and knowledge in the technological field, and pharma companies cannot make products, technological products, that consumers want to use. Tech giants can do that, and they have no experience in healthcare and regulations and pharma. So I see more of a collaborative niche here between pharma companies who are great at producing medicinal innovations, and tech giants that are great at producing technologies that people want to use. All right. I like that we are hearing a conversation about patient empowerment. You will always hear that from me. I agree with Dr. Bertalan, hearing that patients should bring data with them, may flag up something of interest for your healthcare professional. Absolutely, that's the plan. That I want my data to take part in my health or disease management. I cannot do that without the expertise of my healthcare professional. So somebody has to break that wall. It can be me as a patient or my physician. It's never going to be your physician. It has to be you who breaks those walls. So bring that data and start breaking those walls. Lynette Pearson, do you think digital technologies will increase or decrease medical inequalities in care? I think that digital health technologies primarily widen the gap between patients who can deal with the data and digital information and patients who cannot. That's the gap about digital health literacy. But on the long term, I remain optimistic that digital health technologies make healthcare globalized and democratized. Let me put it this way. I think you have a better, if you're living in an underdeveloped region, I think on the long term, you have a better chance to access healthcare through globalized digital health technologies than through your own healthcare systems. Farhan Najib asked the question, would pricing in future pharma be beneficial to generics as well as possibly traditional medicines? Simply, I don't know. I have to be honest with you. I am analyzing the role pharma companies will play in the future of healthcare, how technologies, especially artificial intelligence, will play a role in that. But pricing and economics are not my areas of expertise, so I wouldn't like to comment on those where I don't feel comfortable sharing my insights. All right. Sanjay Cole asked the question, we are working with a company who are developing non-invasive hemoglobin device. Do you think it will be a game changer in the future of medical device industry, I guess? Non-invasive hemoglobin device. It would make sense in many conditions, especially during chemotherapies in different forms of cancer, to do a blood test without doing an actual blood sampling. So of course it makes sense. But building upon the idea Theranos tried to sell, let's make sure this time that all the technologies, all the methods these companies use are evidence-based. So I would advise you to require the technological peer-reviewed proof that their technology is theoretically possible and it works in action before diving into more details. Dr. Yogesh Dukara, it's great to see you again in the chat. Let me share the question with you. How do you see the pharma marketing evolve over the next 1 decade? Would product promotion happen remotely instead of face-to-face product detailing by medical representative? For those who don't know, pharma reps have been roaming around the countries, knocking on the doors of healthcare professionals and bringing them product information, updates, studies, announcements. I do think that the majority of these visits should take place remotely, but I also think that there is a reason why these pharma reps have been building relationships based on trust with those healthcare professionals in person. I think it would be very similar to how healthcare would evolve because of telemedicine, especially during the technological adoption while the pandemic is going on. That the first meeting in person is crucial, and from time to time we have to meet in person, but in between, remote visits are more than enough. I think the same rule would apply to pharma reps and their future. Michelle Brewer asked quite a great range of questions. What will be the information needs of pharma companies in the near future? Is what they monitor and how they monitor it all being changed because of medical technology? The first question is quite wide. I think pharma companies need a lot of information in drug design, drug repurposing, and those would come from data sets through artificial intelligence and clinical trials. They would also run clinical trials through which they would need data from patients and the healthcare professionals patients are working with. And in that case, the technologies you mentioned could be beneficial, could have an impact on the whole process. Imagine obtaining real-world data through the wearables and apps patients can submit, like how a clinical trial is going on right now in California, in the US, with the Apple Watch being on patients, measuring ECGs, trying to predict which patients might have a risk for stroke because of having AFib, atrial fibrillation. In that case, the way they monitor those patients and the technologies they use to monitor patients with would have quite an impact on what kind of information they would require, in general. Margaret Caesar, thank you for the question. How do you see the future of repurposing of unused, unexpired medicines? I don't know about the last part of the question, but I think repurposing medications is quite a fresh, attractive field these years because of machine learning being used for that purpose. And the way machine learning-based algorithms can find medications that nobody has tried to group into one is something that we should learn from, that I think science, the era of the real art of medicine, when AI can come up with cures and drug combinations nobody has thought of before, then we have to find out how the AI algorithm came to that conclusion. I think it's going to be quite a an inspirational era of practicing medicine. Please give 3 booming specialty and super specialty branch for the future. If I can be as bold as possible here, I would say lifestyle medicine / primary care, radiology, and cardiology. And I left out oncology. I would say 4. These 4 are the most exciting medical specialties because of digital health technologies. And you just gave me a minute or so to reflect on the questions that arrived through the Eventbrite website. Many of you asked questions before, and maybe you don't ask the same question on the live chat, but you asked a question before. So I feel like there's an obligation for me to try to answer that. Here is one. Why do you think big tech will have the biggest impact in the future of the pharma industry? I think it would be on, as I mentioned before, on producing technologies patients want to use. So I can imagine a great combination of a medication a pharma company developed with a digital health app or sensor a big tech giant produced, and patients using these two in one combination, like a jackpot combination, leading to higher levels of compliance. All right. Next one. It's not so pharma question, but I think it's important to pharma companies. What skills should the modern clinician acquire to be interesting for the future health landscape? And if you thought for a second that at the Medical Futurist we didn't have a paper, a study about that, then of course you will be wrong, but I'm sure you know that we have studies about all these issues, and I want to share with you one we published about this topic. Here it is. Oh, okay, I love this feature. No, I don't. In that paper, the title was The Rise of Empowered Physician in the Digital Health Era, a viewpoint paper. We interviewed forward-looking medical professionals, and the skills that we identified with them included lifelong learning, teamwork, curiosity, digital health literacy, creativity, patient partnership, compassionate healing, and digital communication. I think these are the key areas and skills that clinicians will need in the near future. All right, I'm trying to really get through all the major questions here. What kind of AI algorithms are these big giants using? I think you're referring to big tech giants, and in that case, all the things you can think of. An AI algorithm to predict your behavior while shopping on Amazon.com, or while using a radiology software, flagging exciting or complicated cases, algorithms for predicting the outcome of patients staying at the hospital, literally anything you can think of. I'm sure some of the big tech giants will use or will experiment on those algorithms already. What is the future of wearable drug delivery devices in pharma? I know it's an exciting area. However, I haven't seen good examples yet about this. I've seen some skin patches that would deliver pain medications on site. I mean, on a specific site on a patient's body, but I haven't seen proof big enough around them. But if I have to comment on its future, then in pain medications, I can think of a role for such devices. But for every other disease and purpose and medication, I think it will be too hard to go through regulations for all these. Staying at this topic, there's another question. What is the future of 3D printed pharmaceuticals? And I just want to show you something right away, and I have to stand up for a second. For that, give me a second here, because I want to show you two things, real 3D printed medications like these here. These medications were made with a 3D printer. I know about 2 cases when the US regulator approved a 3D printed medication. So the future is that you won't 3D print medications at home, and you won't see all the medications being 3D printed. You will see niche areas where 3D printing has a very useful case, and there's a reason why that technology would be used. Like in epilepsy, during seizures, these medications printed out with 3D printers can dissolve so fast because of the way they were printed out, then it makes sense to use that technology in this case. But again, not for every other medication type out there. Okay. What are the investment plans? I always love to hear what are the investment plans for 2022 into digital therapeutics startups which support the medical treatment and pharmacotherapy of many chronic diseases? The same applies here. There have been some digital therapeutic startups out there, but I only seen those succeeding that focused on a niche area, like diabetes medication management or reducing blood pressure, something very specific, because in that case they can be as useful as possible using that technology. But for wide areas, I don't see how they would succeed. So I think pharma companies will keep on investing into those digital therapeutic startups that have a very specific use case and cover a niche area. Whew. And now I jump back to the live questions. There have been a few since I left you here. Wing Zero, what do you think about the future of medical nanotechs? Is it hype or be as good as certain folk claim? Nanotechnology is indeed exciting. I do think that it's something of the maybe the far-fetched future, not for now. There are some use cases, but all those are research projects. I haven't seen good nanotech-based technologies having enough proof behind them in evidence-based studies that they would be used in action. In targeting certain types of cancer, they seem to be useful, but the kind of stories you hear from futurists like Ray Kurzweil about robots swimming in our bloodstream, making decisions and obtaining data, maybe in the far-fetched future. So the hype is bigger now than the proof, but in theory, some of these technologies could work in action. So it's quite an exciting field to keep on looking at. Bobby Babcock asked the question about, are pharma companies investing in preventive care and or longevity health span? Pharma companies are investing into areas that have the biggest chance for business ROI, return on investment. And right now, I think it's clearly treatments, therapeutics, medications. Maybe in the second place comes preventive medicine and those patients like me who would love to have a chance for a longer and healthier life. And we are ready to dedicate efforts into that. And maybe third would be longevity and extending lifespans. If I could, score them based on what I see out there. What are your views about doing pharma from Pakistan? Please guide me because I love the concepts of chemistry. As usual, I cannot give you career advice because I'm on a strange path myself, but you can do pharma from anywhere in the world because of how digital health and digital technologies in general make these things, education and healthcare, globalized. Well, I also cannot comment on specific national trends like Hungarian research community and stuff like that, because it's quite an international audience. And yeah, I did Wing Zero. Yeah, I didn't want to name anyone, but yes, Ray Kurzweil is who I was thinking about. Again, the technology that he has been describing about those robots in the bloodstream, I think in theory they are possible to be made, but we haven't seen any proof yet. So it's quite far away in the future, I think. Here is another question. How can digital health help to empower people in their journey, diagnosis, treatment, and hopefully recovery? Let me summarize my journey with you. I feel like I'm a healthy individual, but I'm part of healthcare already. I have a partner healthcare professional, a primary care physician. We have designed the preventive plan because I want to have a chance for a long and healthy life. In that, we use the data I get from my smartwatch, ECG, fitness, sleep tracking. We use data from blood pressure monitors. We use data from my genetic test reports about what kind of conditions I have a higher risk for. So we focus on those. What kind of medications would cause me side effects or sensitivity? It's quite important to know. We use data from my microbiome testing. So we know how to adjust my diet based on the bacteria living in my digestive system. So digital information very much contributes to my journey. And again, I'm a physician, a researcher, and a geek. It's quite a lucky composition of skills. And still, many times I feel like I'm anxious when waiting for a test result, especially in genetics. I can feel like I'm left alone in my healthcare system because no one has time to deal with prevention. And I feel doomed sometimes with that much information to handle. So without the expertise of my primary care physician, I would be in pretty much trouble. But this way, I think we are trying to get the most out of these data sets. There's a question about how do you see the future of the pharma rep to the healthcare professional relationship developing, and I think I covered that pretty much before. Okay, there's another one. How do you manage different geographies, regulations regarding market access and reimbursement? Are some countries more digital friendly in your experience? I do think that digital health technologies make healthcare globalized, but only in the private sector, which means I could reach out to a genetic testing company in the UK and Italy to give me insights about my genomic profile, but the Hungarian healthcare system had nothing to do with that because I paid for those services myself. So in a private sense, these geographical regulatory boundaries do not mean at all. But there are some digital friendly countries, especially in healthcare. When we actually looked at the 5 best examples for national digital health policies, and those included New Zealand, Australia, Germany, Denmark, the US, even the UK was mentioned in that. When a country has a digital health policy in itself, I think that's an excellent sign. So yeah, that's how we try to differentiate among countries. All right. Okay, going back to the live chat. Where was I? I was here. How can pharma co-position from someone with the name digital innovation? The question is coming from, how can pharma co-position themselves to stay relevant and not lose contact with doctors and patients as tech giants gain traction and credibility into healthcare? They will compete at one point. Absolutely, I covered this before in this Q&A already. The big tech giants can gain traction and investments about the technologies they can produce for patients and physicians. But to gain credibility, I think they might be even a worse position than pharma companies that have quite a bad reputation and PR, in the last couple of decades or so. And it has not become better during the pandemic. So to gain credibility, I think big tech giants will still need healthcare and or pharma companies, and healthcare and pharma companies will need the technological products big tech giants can produce that patients want to use on the long term. Justin Woof or Vov, how is about self-care trend with digitalization in supporting people in treatment of common ailment and minor issues by OTC essentials? I think a combination of using a digital health technology and an OTC drug would work the most here. I know it's not an OTC drug, but the idea would be crystal clear based on this example. I've seen a study about patients dealing with a sleep apnea, sleep disorder, in which the patients have to wear a mask while sleeping. You can imagine it's not comfortable at all. But if they wear those masks, they are more energized for the whole day. They have a higher level of oxygen saturation in their blood, so it makes sense to wear the masks. Before, in the traditional way, every 6 months, patients had to bring the hardware to their medical professional who could download the data from it and analyze it with the patient. And now in the study, they started providing patients with an app on their smartphone through which they could access the data in the morning. So in the morning, they could see immediately how well they performed during the night, how their sleep quality improved by wearing that bloody mask. And that improved compliance and engagement. Of course it did. If you engage patients through their own data, they will take an active role in their health and disease management. I think the same rule would apply to merging a digital health technology with an OTC medication. Bobby Babcock again. What are the top 3 tests you found most impactful when working with my healthcare professional? Traditional blood test, it's still traditional. I mean, Theranos had the theory that from one droplet of blood we could do the same. We cannot, so a blood test, of course. The second was not my whole genome sequencing service. That didn't help that much. But the list I received from that company about medication sensitivity, that was brilliant. When we had an idea with my primary care physician whether I needed cholesterol lowering medication, and I showed her the list and all the cholesterol lowering medications I had a sensitivity for, then we decided to skip it and keep on using traditional methods, adjusting diet and so. And I'm sure we avoided major side effects and hospitalizations because of just me having access to that list of medication sensitivity. And the third one would be microbiome. It's hard to deal with it. It's hard to draw conclusions from the data, but I have been adjusting my diet based on the microbiome results I received from the company that I used before. Sagar Pavar, thank you for the question. Role of digital in emerging markets, which are largely branded generic markets. I would go back to the same issue as before, that merging a digital health technology with a generic drug makes the same sense as merging it with an innovative drug. It's just which company can come out first with that kind of merge between a technology and a medication. And I think that's it's all about. Aquibat, thank you for the question. I cannot give you an advice about choosing your career path. I'm not the right person to do that, so please don't expect that from me. All right. What is the Silvio Frey had a question, and what is the value proposition of the engagement in health data ecosystems for pharma companies? Jesus Christ, what a question to ask. Certainly in clinical trials, through technologies, patients and healthcare professionals could produce more useful data for pharma companies. Hospitals could provide pharma companies with more data through federated learning, which means that the pharma companies could access the vast amounts of data coming from patients, but the privacy of patients wouldn't get breached. That's the advantage of federated learning. And I would stop here because that list, I think, goes on forever. Jose Javier Rodriguez Rivera asked the question about what is it going to be the future of monitored dosage systems? What are going to be the players in the post-pandemic scenario? Amazon, telecare services, pharmacies. I do think that big tech giants can produce better technologies as those in MDS than pharma companies. But of course, these technologies and the companies producing them cannot do anything without the expertise pharma companies have. So still, I see a collaboration succeeding or thriving in that area between pharma companies and tech giants. Regarding the post-pandemic scenario, I don't see how it would significantly change like it was before the pandemic. The pandemic hasn't really impacted that part of the healthcare ecosystem. Oh, only a few questions left. Jesus Gomez Navarro asked the question, what are the top 3 scenarios for 2030 that a pharma company must prepare for, starting today, to become an effective leader in value creation for patients by that time? What a question to ask. I don't even think I can come up with 3 meaningful scenarios covering the whole range that would become possible. But let's see. One scenario would be pharma companies competing with big tech giants for providing healthcare and bringing medications to the market. One scenario would be startups producing really disruptive technologies competing with pharma companies in the market. And a third could be pharma companies keeping on doing what they have been doing, but without collaborating with startups using disruptive technologies and big tech giants. They would keep on losing pieces of the healthcare business pie. I'm sure I couldn't cover everything that could be possible, but I could think of these 3 major scenarios. And Matthew Olson, that's the last question from the Eventbrite registration form. Interest in VR and AR is important owing to the pharma industry's gradual transition to online workflows. However, how do we see inequalities in pharma digital health being addressed in terms of the moral and ethical dilemma? I think in no ways. any company, pharma company especially, that tries to use these technologies, they focus on the return on investment. They focus on bringing this to the market. They just cannot focus yet on bridging the gap between patients who can access data and patients who cannot, and trying to reduce inequalities. That just doesn't happen. And I don't even see how that would happen through pharma companies. I think it will be the responsibility of policymakers and healthcare governments to keep on reducing those gaps and bridging those gaps. So I'm not sure that that's going to happen through pharma companies. All right, we have time for a few more questions in the last few minutes. Christopher Conrad, thank you for the question. I'm not sure if I'm going to be the right person to answer this. It's a very important question to ask, of course, how digital health can help like substance use disorders. I think we have published analysis about that on medicalfuturist.com about the opioid catastrophe going on in the US, and alcohol abuse and drug abuse, and how certain apps and VR-based therapies might contribute to that. But I think digital health cannot contribute to those fields the most. But there are some examples, you can find those in the article, but that's not the key area, the prime area of digital health nowadays. Do you think like programming people gonna start to take tests and become their own doctors? I don't think so. And I would be my own doctor already with my background and everything, and I cannot be that. Believe me, when you start accessing your own data, you start build anxiety, and you cannot deal with that amount of anxiety about your own health without a medical professional's support in the process. Which medical and surgical branches are going to be replaced by AI in the future? We had a dedicated Q&A sessions about that. None. Many will be impacted heavily, but none will be replaced by AI. I think we have about 2-3 minutes left. I'm so grateful to you all for sending in these amazing questions. I hope I could answer most of them. I'm sorry for those that I have to miss, but we have to finish the session right now. It's really amazing that you keep on sending these questions. Thank you so much for being with me, for being with us in that live Q&A session. I really appreciate that. You might know that we can find us on medicalfuturist.com. We will keep on publishing articles, analysis, everything for free. If you want to deep dive into certain topics, then we have electronic books and summaries, executive summaries on leanpub.com, and some books on Amazon as well. And we keep on publishing those. Plus, if you want to access content we have never published anywhere, then we have a Patreon site on patreon.com/themedicalfuturist. You are more than welcome to support the job that the team we have at the Medical Futurist, so we can keep on producing free content. But again, those almost 200 patrons we have, those patrons receive content nobody else is receiving, analysis, publications, and all the ebooks we have for free. That's a part of the package that the Patreons have out there. So thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate that. And of course, in 4 weeks, we will have another Q&A session. What else then about summarizing everything around 2021, a turbulent and exciting year. And of course, we will try to look ahead into what might happen in 2022, which technological trends stand out, where digital health and artificial intelligence are heading. So have an excellent day, and thank you so much for being with me, and see you at the next live Q&A session. Bye-bye.